ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply.
Today we're checking out the BLUETTI Elite 200 V2, which might just be the ultimate reef tank battery backup. What's going on, guys? Devin for ReefDudes. Now you guys know I have a bit of a battery backup obsession, and I've done a lot of DIY stuff in the past, but a lot of people don't want to be, rigging up stuff, and they want plug and play. BLUETTI reached out to me and asked if I want to check this out, and I was like, heck yes, because this thing is freaking amazing. This is tiny. This is 40% smaller than the previous generation one, and there's over 2,000 watt hours of power in this little tiny package, which is incredible. You got a 2600 watt inverter, and the best part is for a reef tank, it can run as a UPS. So what does that mean? It means you could plug this into the wall and plug your reef tank into this. The power goes out, this automatically kicks over and keeps your tank running. So you could have, if you wanted maximum runtime, you hook up your return pump, your power heads. If you wanted to run the whole tank, you could absolutely do that. This thing, I think with resistant loads, it goes up to 3,600 watts or something crazy with the boost mode on it. But yeah, 2,600 watts of, run anything you want off it. So tons and tons of power. Most people are running off a 15 amp outlet, which is, 1,500 watts. So tons and tons of juice to run your reef tank. So this thing is pretty sweet. I'm going to put it through the paces today. I'm going to test it on both my tanks, see how long it takes to charge, see how long it can run my systems, and you can make some educated stuff. Maybe you don't plug in your heaters or your lights, but you plug in the rest of the tank. And if you only have shorter power outages, maybe just plug everything into there. So yeah, let's hook this up to a couple of the tanks and give it a proper test. Okay, so I unplugged my two EB832s and they're plugged into the power strip into the BLUETTI, and I have this plugged into the wall. Now this thing charges insanely fast, which is awesome. So if you take a look at this, the app, there's 1.4 kilowatts coming into it right now. So that's 1,400 watts charging the battery. So if your power is fluctuating, it's off for a bit, it's on for a little bit, it's going to charge itself insanely fast. So this is really cool. I can see right now the AC, it's taken about 511 watts to run my entire tank right now. So that's, the lights, the calcium reactor, it's hot out, it's not the heaters, but the MP60, ZL2, all that jazz. So we're looking at 512 watts, and I can see it says 3 minutes until fully charged. So I'm just gonna wait the 3 minutes until it's fully charged, and then we're gonna pull the power, and I wanna see how long this will run my entire system for. So I love the fact that this can work as a UPS, because that is a game changer for a reef tank. Now, if you are using the app, there's some really cool stuff. So I can turn it on or off from the app. I can turn my AC or my DC outlets on, so you can remotely monitor it, which is pretty cool. So if you're not home, you can see the state of it. You can know if your battery's out. So we got about a minute or two until she's fully charged. So in the meantime, you can charge this off solar, which is awesome. I've had other ones in the past where they've had a very limited input. This one could take up to 1,000 watts of panels and 60 volts, 20 amps for the input, which is awesome because you use almost any panel you want on it and it's gonna work and be happy and charge it up super duper fast. You could probably plug this into, a decent chunk of solar and just let it run your tank indefinitely, which would be kind of cool. This could be, a solar panel or reef tank. That might actually be a fun future project to try. So speaking of solar, I want to test this out with a couple different larger solar panels and see how it fares. However, I also realized I have it charged 100%, so I need to kill it a bit. So I thought, what's the quickest way I could drain some battery? And this feels slightly ridiculous, but so vacuuming the house shaved about 8% off the battery. Now I do want to test the solar charging to see how viable this is. This is the biggest panel I have laying around. It's kind of a cracked one, but the price is right at free, so it's all good. I've been keeping this for a while. Think about throwing it in my shed, but it's perfect to test it out and see how much charging we can get into the battery pack. Now it's rated for 1,000 watts of solar, and this thing is 480 watts, so probably be closer to 430 because it is cracked, but it's a 60 volt max input, and this is 53. So this should be able to handle this guy. Now it does come with this cable that goes from, looks like an XT60 to MC4 cables, and that connects to our PV input. Okay, so instantly kicked on when I put the input on it, which is nice to see. And we'll see what it charges at. So currently it is getting 196 watts in flat on the ground. Oh, we're up to 230. 237. So let's angle this a little bit so it gets a little more optimal. And we have 348 watts coming in. So 347 watts, not too bad for my cracked broken panel. And at this rate, it should be recharged from 92 to 100% in half an hour. That's pretty solid. So you could very easily have this recharging or run your tank completely off solar, providing, you know, whatever runtime you're using can make it through the night. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's get back to the tank testing. And just a quick side note, I am sitting inside my office and it's sitting outside of the corner of my house. And I can see the wattage, the charging, and you know, it says, you know, estimated 18 minutes till charge. So this has some stellar Bluetooth range in offline mode. The other big selling feature for me is lithium iron phosphate batteries. These things last ages. You know, they're rated for at 6,000 cycles. They're still gonna have 80% of their capacity. So it's still gonna have 80% of its battery life after 6,000 cycles. You know, that's like 17 plus years, you know, probably even longer. So super duper cool. We're gonna pull the power. There you go. So grid's out. Tank didn't miss a beat. Everything's still running. It's super duper quick UPS. Love this for the tank. Now we can see here, we have 509 watts coming out. Now, if my tank is running as is on here, it will run my tank 100% full, pumps everything for 4 hours and 24 minutes. So 4 hours, 24 minutes running everything. So if we wanted to cut down on the power a little bit, you know, we're actually like reasonable and we know we don't need our tank 100% rolling. Let's turn off our radions because they're probably one of the massive sucks at the moment. So turn off the 5 radions. Now we're up to 12 hours and 24 minutes running of the tank. So that's still the dosing, the calcium reactor, you know, the MP60s, the gyre, everything else on the tank. So this can run your tank for a long, long time in a power outage. Now, if you're a normal, reasonable person, you're just gonna hook up your flow pumps. And in that case, let's see what we got. Now, I've also done a ton of DIY battery backup videos in the past, and I tend to use my Vortex for that because one, they have a built-in battery backup port, which makes it incredibly easy. But a lot of people ask me, I have a 24 volt pump, a 36 volt pump, how can I do this? And obviously other brands aren't as easy without that built-in battery backup port. So what I did right now is I just hooked up the MP60s and the L2 to this. So this is kind of simulating any other brand of pump out there and using this as UPS mode. So I just pulled the power on this one a minute ago, and currently it says I have 41.5 hours of runtime. Now that's running my return pump at, I think it's about 25 to 30%, and my MP60 is about 75 to 80% on Reef Crest. So that's running all my flow. I can get 45 hours. So that's, you know, just about 2 days of runtime, which is pretty solid. Now, obviously, if I took off the power or the return pump and just the power heads, that would get exponentially longer. So if you live somewhere where you have long power outages, I would only hook up your power heads. If you're somewhere where you only have shorter power outages, you can hook up your whole tank to it and it won't miss a beat. So super duper awesome with that. So it's really cool to see what it does on the water box. I am kind of curious to see what it's going to do on the Nias, so let's head over and check it out. Okay, we're now at the Nias Opus tank for round 2 of how long will it run. And right now, you know, we have 4 MP40s, we have a small gyre, we have the 2 AI edges on there currently running. We also got the Bubble King 200 DC skimmer, you know, heater control. Obviously the heaters are probably off because it's pretty warm out. ATO, and yeah, that's most of the gear on there. There's auto feeders and lots of other like low consumption stuff. But so we're currently at 100%. AC input 240 watts, so it's, and output 236 watts. So it's running from the wall right now. So it is kind of cool how we can quickly see that, you know, the same wattage in and out. So it's basically passing through that electricity right now. And of course, you know, simulated power outage, pull the power to it. Obviously tank didn't miss a beat, so extremely fast cutover, which I absolutely love. Now we can see our AC input 0, and we got 255 watts going to the tank. And currently it looks like it's going to run the tank as is 100% entirely for about 10 hours and 6 minutes. Now realistically, it will be longer than that because as the lights ramp down, it's going to be a lot less power consumption, and then that runtime is going to go up. So there's all these little things you got to think of. And on actual period, it will be much more. Now we'll see if Fusion reconnected yet. We could disconnect our lights and see what that would turn into. So that dropped us down a fair chunk. Now we're currently drawing 190 watts. So now we're up to 18 hours of runtime. So pretty darn cool. So turn our lights back on. Now the cool thing, I love this UPS mode. So like, for instance, you know, power is off, power comes back on. You can see, boom, kicks over. You can see we have AC passing through, AC DC out. On top of that was still recharge and top off the battery. So if you've been running for a while, maybe you have intermittent power outages, it's going to top itself off very, very quickly. And the fact that you can charge it at, 1400 watts coming in is going to top it off very fast. Now I would assume that if you're charging it at 1400 watts and you're running a few hundred watts loads, it probably subtracts that a bit, because I know there's a limit of how much AC that comes in. I believe there is like an expert mode where you can tweak that to be a bit higher. If say you're on a 20 amp circuit instead of a 15 amp circuit, you can do a bit of tweaking. But it's pretty cool to have those options and that it can recharge itself very, very quickly. So as a UPS, this thing is absolutely phenomenal, or for emergency power. Obviously if you do a lot of camping, do a lot of other stuff, it's really cool from that aspect because you just bring it with you and have power on the go. And then you also have it on hand for a tank battery backup if you're suffering from a power outage, a storm or something else is happening. So it's good for the family and good for the tank. Now, aside from just being a wicked aquarium battery backup, it's also useful to have power anywhere, like those days you just don't feel like working in the office. Or for recharging when we're on the go, so the fun doesn't have to stop.